All right, so we will call this meeting to order. First up is roll call. Council at Large Cummins.
Here.
At Large Poston. Here. Council Ward number 1 Hembry.
Here.
All right. Ward number 2 Helm.
Here.
And Ward number 3 McNeil. Here. All right, next up is the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so next up is agenda approval. I would like to move the, in communications number 2, down to the consent agenda. Boots isn't here, but this is generally the time that we would put it under the consent agenda with it to work with city staff. So with that modification, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion.
McNeil with the first and Cummins with the second?
Cummins?
Yes.
Ashton?
Yes.
Hembry? Hembry? McNeil?
Yes.
Helm?
Yes.
All right, down to the communications then. We do have David Bisbee. He is scheduled for tonight. So you can stay right there if you want, Mr. Bisbee, or you can make your way to the podium, whichever.
So I'm just curious what the budget is for the city of Tipton this year, or if you're continuing with the JM for your fireworks show.
I don't know off the top of my head.
We budgeted 14,000.
It's number 1 on the city business later, just
Yeah.
just coming up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, I know there's some email, I believe, with one of the ladies, I believe you.
Me, that's what we're
With
talking about.
J&M, okay.
Number 1.
All right.
The contract is part of the agenda, fireworks contract.
Okay.
All right. Then I'll open it up to anybody else who wants to address the council.
Larry Hodgson, 210 East Sixth Street. And I came tonight because I saw on your agenda, you're talking about solar power. And I did heard a lot about it, so I don't know how far along the city is in the planning stage on this. And I have a few questions. And perhaps some of those will get answered later, maybe they won't. Has there been any thought as to the size of the array? How many, have you got to that point in the planning already?
We're still looking at the feasibility. It's more likely that 1 megawatt would be the choice, but it's also looking at 2 megawatts.
And have you kind of thought about how you're going to pay for that, where the funds are going to come from to pay for it, or how that's going to be handled?
Yeah, and it would not be traditional financing. It would not be, for example, GO or general fund. It would be a revenue bond. And so the idea is, the project would be seen as feasible if it pays for itself. So we're buying wholesale power from RPGI. What we're hoping is that a feasibility study will show that for the same amount of power, we could do better than the cost of RPGI. And so the savings on RPGI would help pay off the revenue bond that finances the solar array. But we're not far enough along with that yet. So tonight, the upcoming item, we have the advisors for the city on the line, but I think it's estimated to be $2,000. It's a preliminary study to look into interconnecting it with the electrical infrastructure that's there now. So it's one more step. On a very preliminary level, last year, when you take a state loan that's being offered at 2%, and federal tax credits that are now being available to municipals, we were looking at a possible feasible project on 15 years. But that all has to play out. We were talking about taking bids eventually on 1 and 2 megawatts and seeing where those two alternates turned out. Now, I understand there's some feeling that maybe the things that are being taken on at once right now, I've got Highway 38, there's the downtown alley, there's the aquatic center. Is it mixing too much all at the same time? And there might be a perception in the public that, says, hey, let's hold off, let's do this later. But I guess I want to be clear, to be accurate about it. The financing for those other things and the financing for this would be different. This would be, if it doesn't pay for itself, if it doesn't stand on its own feet, then it's not feasible. But that determination hasn't been made yet.
Sure, I appreciate all that information. I'm fully in support of solar, of course. I've got solar on my house and been very pleased with the way it's working. It's not going to make me rich, but it's saving me a lot on my utility bills. And also, I like the environmental aspect of it. We're generating power off the sun instead of fossil fuels. I think it'd be a good thing for the city of Tipton to move ahead with this if it turns out that it looks like it's halfway feasible. The panels that they're putting up now have a lifespan of about 25 years. So if you could finance that thing for 15, you're in there down the road, people 10, 15, 20 years from now are going to thank you very much for doing this. And so I think it's a good thing to do. I was kind of wondering, have you ever kind of polled the council to see how they feel about it, whether they're, I'd hate to see us go through all the expense of doing all this other preliminary studies and find out that nobody on the council was in favor. But anyway, I think you should kind of survey the council and see if it looks like it's going to work out financially, if they'd be in favor of it.
You're talking about solar still, right?
Solar,
Okay.
that's right. Because I know that I've been involved over 10 years ago, probably closer to 12 years ago now, we started paying McClure and Associates money to try to purchase property for expansion of the airport. And we've been throwing money, as far as I'm concerned, down the rat hole ever since to McClure and Associates. And we've got nothing much to show for it. And we've been 10, 12 years without an expansion on the airport, and we're getting along just fine without it. And we will continue to get along just fine without it as well. So that's my 2 cents worth on that.
All right,
Thank you very much.
All right. If anyone else also online? All right, I will close that portion of the meeting and we'll move on to the consent agenda. And these are the items that can be enacted with one motion, unless somebody wants to pull them out to discuss. And that would be the approval of the council meeting minutes from February 27th. Excuse me. Approval of the investment treasurer's report from January of 2023. Approval of the development director's report from January and February of 2023. Approval of the library minutes from January 16th of 2023. Approval of the library director's report from January. Then also the addition of the action concerning the street closure of 100 block of West 6th Street between both entrances and exits of Hardee's for music at L&B's Poorhouse from 4 to 11 p.m. on Friday, May 5th, Friday, May 12th, Friday, August 25th, and then also Friday, October 6th. Do any of these need to be pulled out separately? See, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
Second.
Posturing with the first and Helm with the second.
Posturing,
Yes.
Henry, McNeil,
Yes.
Helm,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
All right, next up is the city business, and the first is that fireworks display agreement. It is discussion action concerning that display agreement with J&M Displays in the amount of $14,000. Mr. Wagner?
Yes, this was in the budget last year, and so it appears with the same number this year. I forwarded you an email that had an estimate. I asked the staff person at JMN, J&M, about how many minutes 14,000 would pay for. And the estimate was around 15,000, depending on whether or not it was slowed down a little bit. It could be 10 if it was shown as a more intense display. Thinking that, most people would want to see something in the area of maybe 30 minutes. I asked if she could price what 30 minutes would be. And depending on what you look for, whether it's choreographed or not, she said the display for 30 minutes could run anywhere between $1,000 a minute to as much as $1,500 or $2,000 a minute. So if we can, I wanted to have this discussion because 14,000 for about 15 minutes isn't a lot for people to come to the fairgrounds and park and walk a long way and, whatever else they have to do to come that night. If that's what the budget allows and that's where the council wants to stay, then that's fine. At least it's a public elected person's decision. But I wanted to be sure that you're comfortable with that, knowing that that's what we've been advised.
Any thoughts on it from up here? Ron, yourself?
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, but 15 minutes is not a lot of time, so what do you do?
How long did the show last year?
18 minutes.
18?
Yes, sir. We had 52 shows, I believe it was, that misfired. Did not ignite at all. But last year's was a special type of year, and I say that because, number one, our organization brought so many activities to the fairgrounds. Number two, we had an 1 3/4 of rain, a monsoon rain the day of. So I was watching the city's progression and then delay of the parade, and that was going to determine whether or not we continued with the fireworks for that evening. If the city shut down the parade, we were going to shut down the fireworks. Typically, I should have shut the fireworks down. It's my call when it comes down to it as a shooter to delay that show to the following week or your next rain date. However, we had thousands of dollars involved, ourselves as well as you guys, that I did not want to postpone it because we would have lost the whole show and just had a small fireworks show. So with that, we still had a good fireworks show. My boss was still impressed, J&M, the owner, Dave down there, Jim, he was still impressed that we still had a fireworks show, period. And I will say that that's the first year I've ever shot fireworks barefooted, ankle deep in mud. It was a challenge, to say the least, but we still gave the community a show. And you do have a credit with J&M for the unspent shells from last year.
And that, what we purchased last year, would it be comparable then to what we would be getting this year for that same amount of money? Do you know?
2 years ago was our first year that I took it on
Mhm.
through J&M. And I wrote a check pretty much for $10,000 out of my own pocket to enhance the production, you might say. Last year, we invested $8,000 out of pocket. This year, I cannot do that because other priorities. So unfortunately, I can't contribute like I want to for $14,000 and your credit from last year. It puts more work on me as a shooter, but I will still give you a decent show for $14,000. Now, would I like it to see it? I mean, we haven't raised the rates from last year.
What do we have for credit?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna.
What do you have for credit? 52 shells.
Okay, that would be, another couple minutes?
It depends on your show.
You're saying.
I mean, because last 2 years we choreographed it and that was on us, for free. I mean, out of my pocket. And this year, if you want to choreograph, I can still choreograph it, but it's another $2,000 minimum. You know what I mean, to choreograph it to music, which then we're going to bring our audio in to make it choreographed and make it look and sound right. But, so that's up to you on how long the show you want. I can spread $14,000 over 30 minutes. Is it going to be as big a production of last or the year before? No, absolutely not. The price of everything's gone up last year and it's carrying over this year as well. So that's up to the community and to you guys on how much of a show you want. I tried to push it to 20 minutes as hard as I could last year, but with the rain and everything, we could have had a 20-minute show last year. But with the unspent shells, it was unfortunate, but.
Was that because of the rain?
Yes, sir. An inch and 3/4 the day we set up.
Okay.
So could we get a 20-minute show with the credit from last year's shells unspent?
Plus the 14,
Yeah,
I can give you a 20-minute show. Yes, I can make it happen.
I think people are more interested in oohs and ahs and booms and bangs than they are all the choreographs myself.
Right. But I'm gonna guess that the credit would be about $2,000 on 50 shells, 3-inch shells. So that would give you a $15,000, $16,000 show. And I can make that last 20 minutes. It'll still be a good production, a good display, but unfortunately, I can't put in this year what I had the last 2 years.
I don't remember J&M talking about credit.
Well, it's I believe.
You had it on I agree with Brian, wasn't aware of that as well until you filled out your communication request to be on the agenda and I saw that you referenced a credit. Otherwise, I wasn't aware.
Yes, you do have a credit, and there was 52 shells that did not fire. So you'd be credited 52 shells for sure.
Then how does, under the loyalty program, it has checked 15%. How does that work?
I do know that if you sign a contract with J&M with a set budget annually, and if you pay early, you get a discount. If you contact them, say July 10th of this year, after this year's show, you're like, okay, we want you back next year, here's our budget. You get that money up front right away, that gives you a discount. As opposed to waiting until the year of.
As far as I'm concerned, the choreographing, again, when I was discussing, that's only seen by people that are actually on the fairgrounds. A lot of people stay outside the fairground to watch from the distance.
Mm-hmm.
The choreograph doesn't mean nothing to them because they don't get to see that. They see the booms and the bangs up in the sky. That's what we need to have. So.
Yep. So then, if there's a motion to approve this, it would be to enter into the $14,000 plus the credit and only be fireworks only.
Now, I have resigned from CCFP as president. I turned it over to my nephew and he's still running with it. So there is still going to be activities at the fairgrounds the day of. They're going to continue trying to pursue that for the community.
Yeah.
Myself, I just don't have time for it no more. So unfortunately, I had to give my baby up.
You're probably busy the way it is.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
All right.
I make a motion for the 14 plus the credit.
All right, so Helm with the first.
Second.
And Boston with the second.
Henry, McNeil,
Yes.
Helm,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Hodgson.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bisbee. All right, the second tonight is discussion of possible action concerning LEV, Energy Advisor's proposal for that preliminary electrical interconnection study. We do have Mr. Irvin on tonight for any questions. I'll start out with Mr. Wagner.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what the cost of the study is. It's 10
We
to
estimate
50.
somewhere around, we estimate somewhere around $2,500, give or take, just depends on, you know, the amount of time. We'd only bill for our actual time spent.
Can you hear me?
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sounds good.
Warren McKenna,
Definitely sounds good. What? Irvin, go.
I'm-
all right, yeah, my name's Louis Irvin with LEV. We have Warren McKenna also on the phone. He is one of our associates. He's our solar guru. And he would be the one doing the preliminary portion of the overall analysis. So he's on the phone to answer any questions and maybe even fill in some blanks if needed as I go through this. But I guess I'll leave it up to Brian how you want to approach this.
Well, I think maybe if someone could explain the purpose of the study and how you would go about doing it.
Sure. Yeah, I would say I don't know if I'm getting feedback.
No, we just had an emergency call go off in here, so.
Okay. So essentially what we're tasked to do is kind of start to finish. What's the financial feasibility of 1 or 2 megawatts, as Brian had mentioned? And prior scopes we've been approved by the council and presented. We hadn't really started that because we really need a preliminary engineering analysis to help us determine, you know, the interconnection costs. And what we're suggesting is we personally would not do that study, the engineering study. That would be an engineering firm. But what we're proposing is that our guru here, Warren, who's done a lot of these personally, would be able to go on site, work with John or whomever to look at the actual location, look at the feeders that would be interconnected to this solar array or multiple solar arrays, 1 or 2 megawatts, whether one would be in front of the wastewater treatment plant or not. And then the idea would be to have some preliminary analysis such that we identify any major costs that might be incurred. So we would essentially try to offset some of the engineering costs that another firm would do, with some experienced person, you know, saying, okay, you know, this is the size of the transformer that you'd be feeding from. These are the size of the feeders, and therefore, you know, what loading is already on there from electric load perspective, and therefore what might be needed for upgrades before you install a solar array. So then you can say, well, if it's going to be $1 million to upgrade these transformers, we may prefer to downsize the solar array to fit under existing transformer sizes. That's one example of the things that he would do. He would also look at the site grade and you know, kind of the layout of the solar array. He'd put together a sample layout using some software available to us to help show kind of visually where the solar array would land. And provide a one-line diagram when we're all done there to explain how it all fit within the existing infrastructure of the distribution system from the municipal utility, and then look at the production from the solar array and probably add it to what we've already done in the past to show why do we think this would pay out in, approximate time frame for which it would do so. There are things that have occurred since the last time we talked back in August. Inflation Reduction Act being one, there's some benefits to getting the solar arrays installed yet this year. Some of the tax benefits will start dwindling after this year. So there's a little bit of a push to go ahead and get these things done if we're going to do them. Not a deal killer if we don't get it done this year. It just reduces some of the tax benefits. There's also a tax credit that's directly available to municipal utilities now that wasn't prior. There's some additional add-on incentives that is now under that Inflation Reduction Act, a couple 10% adders having to do with using prevailing wage for the installer and using Made in America products, things like that to help ease the burden. And then what we also would probably do is help understand what some of the whether or not you as Tipton Municipal Utility could actually do some of the AC work to prevent the developer from adding their margin on that to do that work. And so those are some examples of what we wanted to just talk about in terms of the scope of this preliminary assessment. We've estimated it to be 10 to 15 hours of our time. Again, it would be just billed on time, and we don't think it would go anywhere more than that, and certainly we wouldn't proceed if it were without coming back to the council for further approval. But I guess that's it in a nutshell. I guess, Warren, do you want to add anything to that?
I think you covered it pretty well.
Okay. Brian or others, certainly we're open to questions.
Well, I think maybe at this point, I'd like to ask John Walsh to come up, and he's our electric superintendent. And if you have a point of view to share, let the council know.
Well, in the past, I talked to Brian about this. I was not 100% in support of this, but with municipalities being included with this, with possible monies, I mean, it's almost a no-brainer. We should get on board while we can. Before, when we had to finance all ourselves, I just didn't see the benefit for it, because it's so much out of our own pocket. But I think it'd be foolish not to at least try to get what we can up front for it. There's gonna be lots of work on our end. We have some weak points in our infrastructure from where this is at to where we need to get it to, but eventually we're gonna have to do something with them anyway. But this is a good time to do it, just like the outage we had out there at the golf course and stuff like that, and that housing development. It's, each wire that, schools have gotten to, and that was one of the weak points we took care of. We've got some overhead that's gonna be.
Right now with the tax environment and everything, you think it'd be in the city's best interest to at least take a look at it?
Yeah, we should really look heavily into this. I've talked to you about some other scenarios with it, but yeah, we'd be foolish not to right now at this point.
To LEV, can you tell us what are other municipal utilities doing at this time? Are they looking at this too, or putting it aside, or what are they doing?
Warren, I'll defer to you. You've worked directly with several.
Well, I helped with the State Center project, Bloomfield. Did some work for the contractor over in Muscatine when he RP'd bid a project. MUM at Fairfield. There's a lot going on right now. I think Indianola's got one scheduled. There's some other large grants opening up for, I think Montezuma's a part of a grant, statewide grant. So there's a lot going on. Indianola, Sergeant Bluffs, Muscatine, I have on my list here this year, looking at either moving a project forward on those three sites. Vinton's also expressed some interest. Amana, done some work at Amana. I'm working on a study for Farmers Co-op in Kelowna.
How long do you foresee these grants being in place right now?
Well, they go for several years, but they start to taper off percentage-wise. 30% this year. I think they drop about 5% a year. The study I'm working on for farmers, which is a part of the same buying group that you are, that's coming in about a 10-year payback, just to give you an idea.
How big of a unit are they looking at?
So they currently have about 2 megawatt in place, and they're looking at adding another megawatt. So the tax credits are, current credits are capped at 1 megawatt.
Did we originally agree on checking out both 1 and 2?
Yeah, the idea was if it got to the bidding stage,
Right.
you'd look at bids on both. I guess I wanted to also mention, if anybody in the neighborhood near this area, the idea would be that, let's say it's 1 megawatt, it would be to, as best we can, steer it away to the east side of the 11 acres the city owns. I suppose that has to be worked out in the feasibility, but we're aware of the sensitivity that's been expressed there, and so if it could be moved eastward, that would be preferable. But, I wasn't aware of the 5% drop a year. That, let's say it's $1 million, I don't know if that's what it would be, but that gets to be significant.
Any other questions for Mr. Irvin or Mr. McKenna?
As one more, let's say that the council goes ahead with this $2,500 study, if that's what it is. What the conclusion, would that lead to some conclusion or finding on whether or not whatever the next step is after that is viable?
Yeah, Warren, I'll let you take that.
Sure. So you need to know if the distribution system has the capability to handle 1 or 2 megawatt, and what infrastructure you might need if it doesn't now. So the only way to do that is to go over there to do a 1-line diagram, look at the distribution, look at your substation to see if there's adequate capacity to even add a megawatt or even add 2 megawatt. That's a starting point. And then you can issue an RFP for the bids. Once you have the site nailed down,
So I would say, Brian, that the result of this preliminary study would be essentially to determine whether it's going to be 1 or 2, and it's going to be what size would be accommodated by the existing infrastructure. And like John said, if there's some things that you wanted to upgrade anyway that happen to be the bottlenecks for full size in it, that's another consideration. You might be willing to invest in the distribution system to overcome that first bottleneck so that you can get the additional megawatts on the solar. But that is the result of that, is to make that preliminary determination so that it isn't a full-on interconnection study at 1 or 2 megawatts by an engineering firm, and then the results just say you can't do it. I mean, that's to us is the benefit of doing this preliminary work, is that you don't get into a $10,000 or $20,000 study that doesn't give you anything to work from.
Motion to approve.
McNeil with the first to approve,
Second.
and Cummins with the second.
McNeil,
Yes.
Helm,
This is just for the 2,500, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Ashton,
Yes.
Henry.
Yes.
Heard you that time, Ron. All right, thank you for getting on here, Mr. Urban and Mr. McKenna.
Yes, thank you for having us. We'll talk soon,
Thanks a
Brian.
lot.
Next up is a resolution. It's in regards to the contract with the EC for legal services. Doug Herman is online as well. Or was.
Mayor, I hopped in on the phone because I have to drive to another meeting yet tonight, so if that's all right.
He's on the phone, actually. Mr.
Can you hear me?
Wagner? Yes.
Okay.
Put your seatbelt on.
Yeah.
Mr. Wagner?
The reason that the council is being presented with the contract is an increase in Lynch Dallas's hourly rates. It shows you what they will be as of July 1 of 23 and July 1 of 24. I mentioned to you in an email that, or no, it's in italics on your agenda. Number 7 is a new paragraph. These increases under number 7 would just be automatic. They wouldn't come to the council for approval each time. So after these 2 years as proposed here, or after these 2 adjustments, thereafter, they wouldn't come back for approval on increases. It would just happen. Now, if you're comfortable with that, then you would vote for this as it is right now. If you like the idea of knowing when the rate will go up and then approving it at that time, number 7 would probably have to be removed. Doug, is that accurate, or do you have anything to add?
Yeah, only thing I guess I would add, Brian, the paragraph 7 Brian's referring to is language we've started adding to contracts, and quite honestly, in some cases, cities like it because what it involves is if we wanted to do a rate increase, we'd send notice, and that proposed rate increase would take effect July 1. I would expect that proposed increase would, be shared with the council for review every time you'd get one, and the council could either say, you know what, we don't like it, and can move forward with provisions under the contract related to termination, or the council would say, it's a 3 or 4% increase. It's been 5 years since there's been an increase. We're fine with it, and take no action. And then based on the terms of this contract, it would just automatically then on that July 1 kick in. But so you're right, Brian, that the increase could automatically kick in without council approval. But I think any increase we send would be shared with the council, putting them in a position to either say that sounds reasonable and we're just going to let it kick in July 1st, or to take formal action, discuss it, debate it, have a resolution, etc.
If it's a choice, I gotta have it on them to tell us when it goes up, and have to figure out how to remember it internally. I mean, we could always put it on Outlook or something like that, but I don't know. I guess it's whatever your preference is, really.
Unless we get a notice before, so we can terminate.
Sorry?
If we get the increase before July 1st, so we can.
You mean them tell us?
Yeah, that's what he already said, that they would notify us ahead of time before the rates went up.
But do they have to? Is it on the contract, do they have to?
You have to notify us, correct? A rate increase?
Absolutely. Yep, you'd have to be notified in advance, and, you know, we're aware of how cities budgets and when cities budget, so, you know, I think that notice would, if there was gonna be a rate increase, would come probably typically December or January. It wouldn't be, you know, it wouldn't be something that would get dropped on, in my opinion, between, say, July and November, July and December, because of the fact that you need to potentially account for that in your budgeting.
See that in here. I mean, if you add that,
Motion to approve, if you can clarify section 7 where we get notified before budget.
yeah, do it.
So then the motion would be to approve pending changes negotiated by the city manager to paragraph number 7.
I'll second.
And Helen with the second.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I would say that's understandable. I guess my proposal, and I'll talk with Brian about it, would be just to require that any proposed rate increases would have to be communicated in December or January, just in that 60-day window.
Yeah, that would work, but we probably.
Yeah, that's, I
So
think.
Brian and I
that's
can talk. Okay.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
McNeil with first.
Yes.
Hashton,
Yes.
McNeil,
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Doug, for getting on.
Yep, thanks, everybody. Sorry I had to jump on the phone.
All right, so set a public hearing regarding that north Plum Street improvements for this year. It's a project for this year. Jack Pope is here. Need to turn this on? Yeah. We'll have he's using a big giant conduit to get to the TV. Wow.
Before he gets too far, or before he starts, I just want to mention that assuming the council sets a public hearing for April 3rd, we'll send out a letter to people who live along the project area and let them know of the meeting, the public hearing on the 3rd. Let them know that the briefing Jack is going to give you now is going to be available on the city website if they want to watch. And if they want to come to the meeting or send in questions, they can do that. So I didn't want to, after this presentation or as this is going on, I didn't want people to say, well, where's people from Plum Street? We'll notify them.
And I was questioned thoroughly this weekend about this, and I told them there was no point in showing up tonight. This was basically just to set the public hearing.
Right.
And that's what they needed to show up to. So, I know there's a bunch that want to come.
Most definitely.
I'm going to watch them out there.
Yeah, I'm going to as well.
Okay, is everybody comfortable?
Getting there.
It's kind of hard to see, but, so talking about North Plum, we're north of North Street. It's roughly 900 feet we're going through here. I'm gonna kind of bounce back and forth here. Stop me or ask questions whenever you want. What this sheet here is out of the plans. What we set up 2 alternates for the bid here. One's gonna be what I'm gonna call a rural section. It's a 24-foot wide pavement with 2-foot rock shoulders each side. Ditches would stay in place, and we would just replace driveway culverts. Those are the magenta pipes you see here, and replace some of this minor storm sewer that is collected. Some of this ditch is filled already, and there's pipes that come from the east draining into that area. So that's that alternate. The other alternate we're looking at would be an urban section. That's this section down here at the bottom. That would be 27-foot wide curb and gutter. And as you can see here, we try to fill these ditches in as opposed to this section up here where the ditches would remain. That's the primary difference in these two alternatives. I'll get down to that. And this alternate, again, the magenta pipes, you can see that would be new storm sewer. There's a high point somewhere right in this area right here where the stormwater breaks. So this water would continue to go north. The rest of this would collect up and go into the storm sewer system that runs to the south here. On both alternates, we're staging the project. We've got a stage line primarily, it'd be right in this area right here, where this driveway is the U-shaped driveway, then would have access in both stages. Stage one would be, the pavement would be removed and the homes that are along here, people would have to access off of north, or the street would be closed here and the access off of where the stage line is. During the second stage, we've actually, because of this long lane here going back and how long people would have to walk, we've actually put a temporary gravel drive off of this piece so they could get in and out here. So there'd be a little less interruption here. People have better access, I guess. I want to go through all the plans. The primary, this sheet here, this shows removals. The hashed out here is where we would remove. We'd also do some work in the driveways to replace back where we'd have to do grading work to get our match line. This line you see here is the stage line. We've got the plan set up, like I said, in two different alternates here. This is a plan profile sheet just showing the design of the street. For the most part, profile stays pretty consistent. The center line will be lowered a little bit, more so in the urban section than in the rural section to get those curves down, water from the sides to come onto the street. Again, that's the removal sheet, and then this would be our design for that portion of it. Primarily, I believe we've got there's different varying materials of driveways back there, but at a minimum, we're going to put 5 foot of concrete driveway in for each driveway. If they don't have it, if there's concrete now, we would replace all concrete. That's just in detail where we terminate. One thing I didn't mention here in this project overview, the end of the project is primarily where the urban section or the residential area ends on the west side of the road there, and the field starts from there. So that's kind of where we made that determination of the point to end the project. And what the rural section would do, right now there's varying sizes of pipe through there. We would make those consistent from one end to the other, where they increase in size as we go to the south. So.
You mean the ditch pipe, the culvert pipe?
Yeah, the existing driveway tubes and culverts, yes. Yep. And the storm sewer is designed to get the water off the street for a 10-year storm, so there's no impacts there. I guess the big thing everybody wants to know is cost, obviously. So our current estimate for the rural section is right at $410,000. To go to the urban section with curb and gutter and storm sewer, it's $560,000. So we're right at $150,000 more. We did break out costs for stormwater considerations, and of that 410 on the rural section, about 56,000 would be considered storm sewer improvements, storm water improvements. And then on the urban section of the 460, roughly 138,000 of that would be stormwater improvements. we're estimating about a 70 working days on this, which would be roughly 3 months for the 2 phases. And the contract's been set up to start June 1st. First payment wouldn't be until the fiscal year 24, so it'd be July of this year, should things get approved here tonight.
I think one thing we should point out for anybody viewing it, the camera was looking at Jack, it wasn't looking at the screen behind me. The plan set are these sheets can be available at City Hall. If anybody wants them, I can email them to them. Added to that, when you do have a public hearing on April 3rd, Jack can appear at least electronically and have the screen available to him to show some of these over again for anybody who comes to the meeting who couldn't see it here. So I just wanted to mention that if somebody is looking at this at home and they're saying, well, wait a minute, I can't see what the council's seeing up on the screen. Yeah, we understand that, and we'll try to help with whatever we can in order to make what he's talking about more clear.
You haven't got any of these overall views yet, but I'll send you a couple in the mail so you've got those, and then I can send it to you electronically as well.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Jack, what's the material? for the
Concrete,
roadway?
sorry, concrete. We're actually, because of the traffic on there, maybe not misspeak here. I believe we like to go with 8-inch concrete on that because of the loads coming down. Sorry, 7-inch pavement. With, we're putting what we call CD baskets in there that helps with load transfer. So 7-inch concrete with some additional reinforcing in there. It's got a 6-inch granular base, and then we do a little subgrade treatment under that. So, and we're also putting drains down. You'll see, kind of hard to see up there, but we'll put a drain down each side that helps get the moisture underneath the pavement away. That's primarily one of the issues you see up there now is the moisture is causing all kinds of problems with the street surfacing.
We also, at the public hearing, Melissa can also cover a bit more about how to finance the project. We're looking at this differently than Highway 38, for example. This project, the city has been saving for each year in the street department, in the street project CIP. And there's saving toward the project for both the pavement aspect, and then we have the stormwater utility that can cover some or all of the stormwater costs. We redefined stormwater to be eligible for curb and gutter. You know, soon after I started here, we changed the ordinance to cover both. So that breakout is for, in the urban section, curb and gutter. Right now, you can see the rural cross section was the original idea. That's the one we planned for in the CIP. That's the one that is the most affordable, right now. If the council ends up wanting to do the urban section, we'll have to look at the finances more internally. But and in the end, you never know where we're going to land until the bids are actually in. But right now, in working with these estimates, Melissa will be able to talk to you more about this on the 3rd, on what's possible to finance when the bids finally come in. In the resolution, just covering the timeline, if the public hearing is set tonight, it would be conducted on April 3rd. And again, we'll send an invitation to the people who live along the project area to be able to come to that meeting. Now, this is talking a bit more about the street at a point where we're setting a hearing than what we typically do. But this is looking at a couple different options. As the line here says, sidewalk is not planned in either of these options. So if the council is saying, well, hey, wait a minute, what about sidewalk? This would be a chance, or the third would be a chance to bring something up, preferably now than later. Bid opening would be April 11, and then it would come back to the council meeting on April 17th. That would be your first opportunity to make a decision on a bid.
Jack, I have just two more questions. The first is, since it's gonna be divided into two, and I know, like Brian said, we've gotten into this a little more than usual on this, but, how long do you see each?
Roughly at 35 days.
So right in the
It'd be
middle.
about a month and a half, yeah. We tried to, I think it was 900 foot long and our stage line is 430 feet, so it's gonna be pretty close to similar. One thing I did not mention is actually the impacts on, we've got easements for this property, or for this project. The impacts for the rural section are actually a little bit higher than the urban section, because we need to grade out the ditches, especially on the west hand side of the project.
And my last question is, have there been shortages in concrete supplies yet this year, do you know of?
Well, not this year, but the end of last year, it was,
Yes.
cement was in short supply in some areas. It was, the western part of the state was more impacted than the eastern. One thing we're running into is there's increased cost because there's not as much fly ashes. The concrete design allows for fly ash to be substituted for cement. There are generating facilities that mentioned, as the solar arrays become more popular, there's less coal being burnt and fly. That's what generates the fly ash. There's less fly ash available. I'm told that it's available in the country. There was the issues with railroads last year too. It was just hard to get it here. So hopefully that's been taken care of some over the winter. But again, we'll know once we start. We've done a few bids so far this year, and they're running like that isn't a problem so far, I guess. So to answer your question.
Yeah, thank you. All right, if there are no other questions or comments, is there a motion to set the public hearing for April 3rd? Motion. Posturing with the first and McNeil with the second?
Cummins?
Yes.
Posturing?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
McNeil?
Yes.
Helm?
Yes.
All right, and our last one tonight is the discussion and possible action concerning the sidewalk situation at Plum and East 7th Street. Jack?
Yeah, so I went and looked back. 2008, we did an estimate for this project. There was a reason we didn't get this project done back then, I think. Costs, obviously. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. You can see, because of the entrance to the park here, we avoided that area. I think there's a big structure here, sanitary sewer. So basically, we're looking at running from 7th to just past 10th, where you've got a crossing going across here right now. I do want to go down here and show you what we're kind of highlights what we're running to. So this is a photo looking north from the intersection. Basically, you can see the bank here that has to be negotiated if you're going to put a sidewalk through here. And I've got one more photo I just took a snapshot off of. We can't go in the west. This property here encroaches into the right of way pretty bad. It looks like the right of way. Let me go one more screenshot here. Let me go one more. So this is from the GIS site, county GIS site. The right of way on the east here appears to be quite a ways back as compared to on the west. So there's room over here. So there's two locations you could probably pick for that sidewalk. If we pick closer to the curb, what I showed here was, this is the curb right here, curb line. This would be looking north down there, and this is the east side of the road. If we set that sidewalk back 6 feet, assuming a 5-foot sidewalk, you'd have like a 2-foot retaining wall, and that's gonna be that, for that first 250 feet primarily as we go through there. Then there's also the issue of the tree that's down in there close, it's been carved into a tiger that would be in the way. The other option is to look back here, until we know where the right-of-way line is. GIS sites are sometimes approximate only. If we went back 15 foot, got beyond that hill and tried to put a sidewalk back here for their 5-foot walk, you'd have less grading until we got to, I should have stayed there. It's kind of hard to see. This driveway here has a retaining wall along the south side of it. So if we were back over here with the walk, we'd have to negotiate getting that retaining wall rebuilt and get a sidewalk slope to it through there. That's around 340 feet to get to the park, 350 feet. And that's the most difficult portion, obviously, because once you get to the park, we got a little more flexibility where we go and how we do it. So, those are the challenges, I guess. So.
And did you have a price estimate back then?
So 2008, we estimated, I think we had 100. We estimated 190,000. That was with retaining wall along there. That was the 2008 numbers. If I was just to apply a cost of construction increase since then, we're talking around 335,000 project cost. If we get back there further on this in the right of way, that may go down a little bit because you wouldn't require the retaining wall that whole length there. But I haven't done a detailed study on that. And primarily, without knowing where the right of way is, I don't know where we'd impact, because there's trees here in this yard that they're not equal distance back, so I don't know how we'd have to snake through there to get lessen the impact too, though. So.
All right.
Just a question, how close would it have to get to the front of that house?
This one right here, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, not very.
You mean it wouldn't be very far from the front of the house?
No, well, at that point, let me preface it a little bit. We'd probably start coming back towards the road at that point anyway, because just past this driveway, then we don't have that issue of the high bank. We have to deal with this here. So, just a minute, let me get that sheet that shows it.
So it's snake back to the west a little right here?
Yes, right at the driveway, we'd start snaking back towards the street. Because we have to be over there once we got the park, because there's features in the park we want to avoid as well, and they're closer to the street.
Hey, Jack, if I could interject with your option one and with the cut right behind the curb, the retaining wall. I hadn't thought of it before, but just thinking about it now, I could leave that water main a little shallow. There's a water main there. It might be just a little bit further back.
Further back, yeah, because we
have to take a good look.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I haven't done a detailed study. All those things would come into play if you want to really seriously look at it, where we put it and what utilities are impacted. Obviously, down the west side, we have poles down through there too, so.
It's not feasible to jump from one side of the road to the other with a
I wouldn't think you'd want to, no, it's the safety issue, obviously. You're to that overall view. I mean, if you could stay over there, that'd be great. But I mean, ultimately, the idea is to get to the park, I assume. So somewhere you're gonna have to cross the street. It would make sense to do that on this side of the highway rather than over here, I would think.
All right, so this is just a discussion of possible action, so we don't have to take any action. Thanking Jack for bringing his stuff and we can take it under advisement. I'm assuming we can get this emailed to us too.
I can get this to you, yep.
If the council wants to take up action at some other point.
Some other point, like you said, thank him for your time.
Thank you.
All right, so that ends that part of the meeting. We'll move down to the reports, the mayor's report. I see Brian is gonna remind us about a special meeting next Monday, but I won't be there, but I will be dialing in. And I should have cell service then. Council reports, committee reports, city manager?
Yeah, on this reminder, we talked last time about a special meeting on the 13th at our same time. But this is a switch in the topic of the special meeting. This would be your review of the Highway 38 bids and a possible acceptance of the low bidder. But along with that, we're going to ask Maggie Berger to help us with the presentation on the financing of this project. Now, this project also looks at the estimates for the downtown alley, those 2 blocks that we're looking at between 6th and 4th. Because if that happens, it would have to be rolled into the geo bond that we're talking about. So the assumption is that it would roll in both. Maggie will be here to show you a financing plan. Now, the actual bids on the downtown alley are going to happen later. But for now, we're just working with the estimates that have come in.
All right. Thank you. Department heads? So there are none. We are down to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn? Second. Cummins first, Apostol second.
Hembry, McNeil, Helm,
Yes.
Cummins, Boston.
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.